Four major first-tier cities in China experience a simultaneous decline in the volume and price of second-hand houses, reflecting the economic difficulties in China. Since the beginning of this year, the Chinese property market has entered a downward trend after a brief upturn in February and March. Recently, with the outbreak of nationwide layoffs and unemployment, many homeowners who are unable to repay high mortgages have started to sell off their properties, leading to a wave of second-hand house sales in China. The latest data shows that second-hand house prices in 70 major and medium-sized cities in China have generally fallen, and transaction volume is also declining, including the four first-tier cities of Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen. A real estate agent named Mr. Peng in Shanghai's Lujiazui recently released a video that portrays the cold state of the city's second-hand housing market. In the video, he receives a call from a homeowner who entrusted him to sell her house but hasn't received any purchase inquiries. The homeowner expresses her concern about the lack of interest in her property despite the high demand for house viewings. Mr. Peng assures her that he will find suitable buyers and help her sell the property. However, the market downturn is evident and the number of buyers is significantly reduced.
Recently, the prices of houses in the East Garden of Lujiazui have dropped again. Yesterday morning, a previous homeowner who had entrusted us to sell their house called me. "Hey Peng, it's been over a month since I entrusted my house to you guys. I thought there were a lot of people interested in viewing your listed houses. Why hasn't anyone come to see my house?" Feeling a bit embarrassed, I replied, "Indeed. There have been people interested in viewing houses recently, but hardly anyone is actually making a purchase." She awkwardly chuckled and said, Yeah, the second-hand housing market in Shanghai isn't as good as before." I assured her, "Auntie, don't worry." After hanging up the phone, she called again half an hour later. She said, "Peng, how about this? Can you lower the price of my house by 200,000 yuan? I replied, "Sure, we can do that." Sigh, the market had indeed been quite slow lately.
According to data from CRIC Research Institute, Shanghai's second-hand house transactions were 24,000 units in March, 17,700 units in April, and around 16,000 units in May, representing a year-on-year decline of over 30.4%. This data approaches the boom-bust line of 15,000 units, which indicates a downturn in the second-hand housing market. From 2019 to May 2022, Shanghai's second-hand house transaction volume remained above 23,000 units. As a result, the average signing price has also fallen with the decreasing transaction volume. In May, the total transaction amount for second-hand residential properties in Shanghai was 51 billion RMB, a 16.43% decline compared to the previous month. Davy Zhen Huang, an economist based in the United States, stated in an interview that Shanghai's housing prices have fallen and the transaction situation is also unfavorable. The data collected by his company indicates that compared to the peak in 2019 and 2020, the average housing prices in Shanghai have dropped by around 25%. Lu Wenxi, an analyst from Shanghai Centerline Property, analyzed that the second-hand housing transaction volume is approaching a critical point and there will be significant short-term pressure. Without external intervention, the transaction volume may continue to decline in June. Ms. Li, a real estate agent in Shanghai, mentioned that both high-end rentals and transaction prices in Shanghai are declining. Rental prices have dropped by 20 to 30% and luxury home transactions are also sluggish. She explained that the high-end rental market mainly targets foreign companies, but many employees are leaving. Investment properties in these areas are difficult to rent out, so the owners are hoping to sell them after renovation for cash flow. However, luxury homes are not easy to sell. Previously, we reported that due to the withdrawal of multinational corporations from Shanghai, the high-end rental and sales markets have been bleak. On June 15th, the National Bureau of Statistics of the Communist Party of China released a set of economic data. In May, the resale prices of second-hand homes in first-tier cities decreased by 0.4% compared to the previous month, with a decline of 0.6% compared to April. Among the four first-tier cities, Shanghai experienced the largest decrease, with a month-on-month decline of 0.8%. Beijing, on the other hand, saw its first month-on-month decline this year, with a decrease of 0.6%. Guangzhou and Shenzhen had slightly lower declines at 0.2% and 0.1% respectively. The resale prices of second-hand homes in second and third-tier cities shifted from remaining stable compared to the previous month to a decrease of 0.3% and 0.2% respectively. However, we still hold a skeptical attitude towards this data because numerous reports from independent media suggest that the market's decline is far more severe than the data indicates. Let's take a look at the situation in the Beijing housing market. Historically, Beijing has always been a hotspot in the Chinese real estate market with high housing prices. According to the data from the National Bureau of Statistics, the resale prices of second-hand residential properties in Beijing decreased by 0.6% in May compared to the previous month. In fact, since April, the cooling of the Beijing property market has already become a noticeable trend. After reaching a peak of over 22,000 transactions in March, the number of second-hand home transactions dropped to nearly 14,000 in April and further decreased to nearly 13,000 in May. It is possible that there will be a further decline in June. While the transaction volume of second-hand homes declined, the number of listings continued to increase, resulting in more and more houses being put up for sale. As of early June, the number of second-hand homes listed in Beijing had increased by about 20% compared to March, reaching approximately 145,000 units. This represents an increase of about 40,000 units compared to the peak period of transactions. A senior store manager from Lianjia, a real estate agency, said that it is considered relatively normal for the number of second-hand home listings in Beijing to be in the range of 100,000 to 110,000 units, and anything beyond that would be considered unsellable. According to a report from Caijing 11 People magazine, excessive supply combined with shrinking demand has forced many homeowners to lower their prices. For example, in the North Bali Drang community in Chaoyang district, there are currently 135 units listed for sale. At the beginning of June, a 56 square meter two-bedroom apartment with high-quality interior decoration in this community was listed for 3.05 million yuan. Real estate agents stated that a similar unit had a transaction price of over 3.6 million yuan in February, indicating a 15% price decrease. In addition to the surrounding areas of internet giants, housing prices in the suburbs of Beijing are also declining. Yanqing District, Miyun District, and other non-core areas of Beijing have experienced a continuous decline in second-hand home prices over the past 2 years. The most significant decline has been observed in Yanqing District, with a nearly 5% year-on-year decrease in May last year and a more than 3% year-on-year decrease this year. According to Caijing 11 People, as the economy declines and the pandemic subsides, potential home buyers in the central urban areas are generally adopting a cautious attitude, while suburban housing prices continue to decline. Under the mentality of preferring to buy when prices rise rather than when they fall, the transaction volume in the suburbs of Beijing is even more bleak. Data provided by Shanghai Research Institute shows that in April, among the 10 key monitored cities nationwide, which are Beijing, Shenzhen, Hangzhou, Chengdu, Suzhou, Nanjing, Qingdao, Nanning, Foshan, and Dalian, the number of second-hand home transactions was 90,700, a decrease of 18.65% compared to the previous month. In May, it was approximately 79,200, representing a further decrease of 12.68% compared to April. Compared to the second-hand housing market, the situation for new homes is slightly better. In May, the prices of new homes in first-tier cities still remained a slight month-on-month increase. However, the magnitude of the increase was only 0.1%, a decrease of 0.3% compared to the previous month. Specifically, in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, the prices increased by 0.2%, 0.3%, and 0.1% respectively compared to the previous month, while Shenzhen experienced a decrease of 0.2%. In second-tier cities, the prices of new homes increased by 0.2% compared to the previous month, but the growth rate was also 0.2% lower than the previous month. When compared to the same period last year, the prices of new homes in first-tier cities in May only increased by 1.7%. Misfortunes never come alone. Bad news always comes at the same time. While there are problems in the housing sales sector, there are also problems in the financing of real estate companies. According to data from China Real Estate Information Corporation (CRIC), in May, the total financing amount of 80 typical real estate companies was 26.3 billion yuan, a decrease of 56.4% compared to the previous month and a decrease of 60.4% compared to the same period last year. Since the beginning of this year, the monthly financing amount of typical real estate companies has been hovering at a low level. In March, the financing amount briefly exceeded 60 billion yuan, while in other months, the financing amount was only around 40 to 50 billion yuan. In May, this value dropped below 30 billion yuan, setting a new low for monthly financing of real estate companies since 2020. Among them, financially troubled real estate companies still face difficulties in obtaining support, and the cases of real estate company defaults have not ceased. With sales yet to recover, some real estate industry insiders admit that the crisis has not been fully overcome by companies. Industry insiders believe that the potential risks in the real estate market are still high. Increasing liquidity for real estate companies through more financing support and allowing project cash flows can be an effective measure to alleviate the industry's difficulties and avoid the risks of project suspension or abandonment due to funding problems, thereby enhancing industry and market confidence. The National Bureau of Statistics of China has stated that currently, real estate development companies have low willingness to develop new projects. From January to May, the newly started area of houses decreased by 22.6% compared to the same period last year. The rate of decline was 1.4 percentage points higher than that from January to April. At the same time, the completed area has grown significantly. With the promotion of the guaranteed completion policy and strengthened coordination of real estate key projects across the country, the completion of real estate projects has increased rapidly. From January to May, the completed area of houses increased by 19.6% compared to the same period last year. Affected by the decline in the area of new housing construction and the increase in the area of housing completion, the scale of housing under construction has decreased. From January to May, the construction of houses decreased by 6.2% compared to the same period last year. As a result, the decline in real estate development investment has increased. From January to May, real estate development investment decreased by 7.2% compared to the same period last year, an increase of 1% compared to January to April. Looking at the mortgage situation, according to statistics from 6 major mainland banks, in the first quarter of 2023, personal housing loans only increased by 472.5 billion yuan, accounting for only 4.66% of the total new loans. In the same period in 2018, personal housing loans were 2.5 trillion yuan, indicating a significant decline in mortgage activity and confirming the weakness of the real estate industry. The weakness in the real estate market will undoubtedly have a heavy impact on the revenue of local governments in China. Chinese local governments heavily rely on land sales revenue. In 2022, land sales revenue nationwide reached 6.7 trillion RMB, accounting for 32.8% of the total national fiscal revenue of 20.4 trillion RMB, which accounted for 43% in 2021 and 46% in 2020. The 2022 land sales revenue accounted for 61.4% of local fiscal revenue of 10.9 trillion RMB, which in 2021 accounted for 78.36% and 84.03% in 2020. In 2022, tax revenue related to land and real estate in the country was 2 trillion yuan compared to 2.1 trillion in 2021 and 1.97 trillion in 2020. It accounted for 11.5% of the total national tax revenue of 16.7 trillion yuan compared to 12% in 2021 and 13% in 2020. In 2022, the sales area of commercial housing was 1.4 billion square meters, with sales amounting to 13.3 trillion yuan. Rough estimates show that the government takes approximately 65% of the total transaction amount from home buyers through land sales and taxation. When houses cannot be sold, it directly affects the government's revenue. As an outstanding example, Wuhan City's budget for tax revenue in 2023 is 138.8 billion yuan, while the budget for land use rights revenue is 122 billion yuan. However, as of May 30th, the land transaction amount in Wuhan was only 3.2 billion yuan. The land revenue has only achieved 2.6% of the budgeted amount. In the most severe period of the pandemic in the first quarter of 2021, Wuhan's land revenue reached 20 billion yuan. The low land revenue compared to the budget means that this city with a population of tens of millions is on the verge of bankruptcy. Wuhan's situation is the worst, but other cities are not faring well either. Wuxi City's land revenue in 2022 reached 103.6 billion yuan, but currently it has only reached 11.4 billion yuan. Guangzhou's land revenue in 2022 was 44.8 billion yuan, but currently it has only reached 8 billion yuan. Jinan's land revenue in the previous year was 45.3 billion yuan, but currently it has only reached 4 billion yuan. From January to May 2023, the various types of land transfer fees in 300 mainland cities amounted to 866 billion yuan, a decrease of 12.5% compared to the same period last year. If this situation continues, it is feared that many local governments may go bankrupt. According to Chinese economist Ren Zeping's calculations, as a pillar industry of the Chinese economy, the real estate industry has been one of the key drivers of economic growth for the past 20 years. The added value of the real estate industry accounts for about 7.34% of China's GDP, indirectly driving related industries to account for 9.9%, totaling about 17% of the GDP. The real estate industry has always been the lifeline of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and now the rapid deterioration of the real estate industry is beyond imagination. On one hand, the CCP is urgently discussing plans to rescue the market, and on the other hand, the number of second-hand housing listings is increasing dramatically. During the epidemic, the CCP authorities tightened loans to force people to buy new houses to maintain the government's finances. They set multiple restrictions on the purchase of second-hand houses to help developers clear inventory. The current situation is that home buyers that need housing are reluctant to buy, fearing that they will end up losing their money. People who used to sell old houses to buy new ones are now more likely to sell their surplus houses to recoup their funds. People are clearly more cautious when it comes to purchasing new homes. The decline in the second-hand housing market reflects the worsening liquidity of the real estate market, indicating a decrease in economic activity in China. Most importantly, people have lost confidence in the Chinese market. Many wealthy individuals have already started divesting from China by selling their properties in a hurry. Even before the graduation season, the official unemployment rate among young people has reached an unprecedented 20%. Large companies have frequently announced layoffs such as Alibaba Cloud and Wanda Group. Even the financial industry, which has always been stable, is experiencing salary cuts, and civil servants holding secure jobs are also facing difficulties, leading to people tightening their wallets. China's real estate market, with falling prices in both the volume and price of second-hand houses and a sluggish market for new houses, is indicating significant problems in the Chinese economy, which has relied on real estate as a pillar industry.